Hello and welcome to week 1, day 2 of the LJLOU. And I will be your host today, J Rule. We have some bangers lined up for today with some great casters as well. Welcome in Initialize and Mars Swan.
Hello? I'll go first. Hello, everybody. It's good to be back. It feels great.
And I'm glad to have you back. Obviously, early morning for us people in Britain, but obviously out there.
Great to be here, though I think my internet may just have spiked on me, so I am here I'm going to robot for a second. Have fun, guys.
Okay, no worries. We have a lot to talk about, and we can hopefully get the robot removed before you get into the game. But
Blitzcrank song, yeah.
A pretty interesting day one. You know, we saw some stuff that maybe wasn't expected. I want to start immediately, before we get into the games of today, Smite top Poppy. You know, do we see it again? Do we see more crazy stuff like that? Is Smite top the new meta?
I'm not against the idea that it's technically meta, but it's perfectly fine in my eyes. It's going to be only a Yellow Yoshi special. He is the Poppy god. He is the #1 self-proclaimed Poppy top of Japan, best Poppy in Japan. I don't see anybody else really picking it up, especially when Ebby is just better.
Fair enough. And obviously there's a lot of rumors about other Smite top laners. Obviously Janna was the Notorious. Haven't seen that yet.
Indeed.
Do you feel like that's a little bit too far to reach away, or do we maybe see that creep in as we are on now day 2? Maybe people are a little bit more adventurous.
I'm more interested to see what Sam thinks of this.
Hopefully the connection will come back through soon.
Assuming my internet is functioning and you can hear me, my personal thoughts are like, it's definitely doable. But we'll see. Hang on. Maybe let some of the people thought, well, I'm going to go switch my internet connections around and hope I can fix some stuff.
Right,
okay, and I guess the next one to bring up very briefly is Graves top. You know, a little bit more normalized, a little bit more simple to play, has some good matchups, but definitely increasing popularity, has moved out of the jungle. Do you feel like it's something more and more we see? Obviously, there's some really classic top laners that the LJL love to throw out, but do you maybe see this as a new meta? The new movements are going to be things like Graves, Gwen, etc.
I think what we've got to remember is we are the LJL, so Renekton nah, Renekton nah, Renekton nah, Renekton nah. We'll then figure everything else out, but at this moment in time, it's basically just those only 2 champions. We could see things like the Quinn, but the only player I'd expect to really pull that out would be Kinotsu. And that's because he was the only player that would play Camille. He would actually play these dueling top laners, which so many other people just didn't want to do, and they would just kind of play the known standard, really.
And I guess the final pick. Do we maybe have Initialize back? We're being told that we're laughing, but the stream isn't necessarily hearing Initialize. But we'll carry on with a couple more questions. And the last one that I want to bring up that we've kind of seen, and we've actually seen around a lot of the other minor regions, but Zeri bot lane has become a thing. She is really striking the hearts of many an ADC player.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about it? You know, a lot of people are not too happy about it in solo queue.
I mean, we've already seen it once over in the LJL. We saw it 2 days ago in our last game of the day. Dresscode played it for V3 Esports versus Burning Court. And honestly, Dresscode was not the issue of that game for V3 Esports. He had actually a pretty decent performance on Zeri, going 3-1-1. Not a basic way of describing it with the KDA, but honestly, the eye test, he looked perfectly serviceable. The rest of everything else around him was on fire, so he was just sitting there going, it's okay. I think Zeri, and I think a really good interview, oh god.
Who are you thinking of?
who's the mid laner of Astralis?
Oh, Nuke Duck, yes.
Nuke Duck actually talked about, and he confidently said she's the most broken champion at the moment. So I would
She's certainly up
confidently say Zeri is top at the moment. I'm expecting to see a lot of it, and we've got some incredible AD carries, don't we, initialize?
Yeah, we really do. And we've got a lot of players who can definitely do it. And the thing that Zeri brings, two things, is one, basically, if you are good with your hands, you are given a lot of tools to do things. And that basically means you can dance around the edge of fights. And if enemies don't bring heavy amounts of CC or particularly like point-and-click stuff, it's quite easy for you to skirt the edge of fights. Well, easy. It's possible for you to skirt the edge of fights with just raw mechanics, which is really, really, really good. And of course, your rundown potential, your skirmishing potential, your ability to cross overalls, all amazing stuff. You synergize pretty well with a couple items, and assuming you're not the only damage dealer, you can really help like clean up fights in a way very few other AD carries can.
Yeah, it's definitely a strong champion. It's definitely one to watch out for, and I definitely fully vibe with the lockdown CC. Played against it a few times in solo queue. It is not the most enjoyable experience. But with that being said, let's move on to today's games. We have Fukuoka SoftBank HAWKS Gaming versus Rascal Jester coming up first. And to be honest, I don't know if we were expecting them both to be 0-1 coming into this one. Do you feel like either of them are going to be kind of like, whoa, that was a bit of a knock? Or do you feel like they're coming in with a lot of energy, ready to prove that they're actually ready to step up and maybe get high up in that table?
Yeah, so I think we're a little bit short on time because official streams decided now is the time for pick and ban. But to answer your question before we disappear, I feel that Rascal Jester won't feel too hard done by because DFM are actually a good team still, it turns out, which was one of the questions we sort of had. But they turned out to be pretty good still. So I don't think there's too much to worry about there. HAWKS, I think, will be a little bit more like, stuff to work
Frustrated.
on. Yeah, because that Poppy Top was not what they were expecting. I can almost guarantee it.
Yeah.
Well, aside from Yellow Yoshi playing it a lot, but Smite Poppy Top, maybe not.
Okay, well, with that being said, we are going to go into pick and ban. So I'll hand it over and leave it you guys with the great knowledge and hands of the two casters.
Thank you so much, J-Real. And I'm hopefully I'm just going to be here and not disappear on all of you with my slightly spotty internet connection earlier on. But as we said, we are into picks and bans. Kinatsu's pick first picked that Jin's out. Rascal Jester on the blue side have locked in Jinx plus the Poppy, which might be giving HAWKS a bit of a flashback to only the last game day where they did get a little bit abused by Yellow Yoshi's Smite Poppy Top.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think that's the huge takeaway. I love the fact that certain meta things have bled into the LJL. Mostly the Corki, the Zeri, the Caitlyn, the Karma, these kind of bans that always have to come out. Rise is one of those ones that hasn't. But you know what? A big one that hasn't been taken away yet? It's Gwen. Gwen is so good, and we have so many good Gwen players. Both Aino and Kinatsu in their rookie years were actually very prevalent. Well, Kanatu far more. Aino played it, I believe, twice, but I still
on it.
Did okay on it. I don't recall them like running it down, and that Axis squad, especially in summer, didn't.
Yeah, considering we had so few Gwen aficionados, these were probably the two of the higher names on the list, if not the highest names on the list. But Rascal Jesters have decided to take a leaf from DFM's book and go, well, we lost to it, might as well pick it ourselves.
Right.
That is a Tryndamere locked in. Still a flexible option, but more often than not in the top lane these days.
Yeah, and considering Recap's champion pool, I'd be very surprised if that was the direction we were going in. Banning the Twisted Fate, so they are expecting Dasher to be they're not going to flex his Graves, they're not going to do something really spicy, they're not going to pull a solo queue. Dasher is still open. That Graves is going to be going up to top lane, so both top lanes, supports and jungles all done. We're all mirror matching, so it's only mid and support to be picked out here. And initialize, personally, the big one that I'm still surprised hasn't been done is that Gwen. Oh, though Vex going off is actually not too surprising.
Yeah.
A lot of players have already started picking up in the LJL. We saw it twice. Once from Recap,
for sure,
once from Kaito. No, we saw it 3 times from Megamin as well. So literally like one of the most presence champions.
People really liking it over in the LJL. Of course, got to call out Corki still unbanned. This is 12.2, so Corki's still pretty good.
first ban for Rascal Jester.
So it was. I'm missing the other side of my screen, so thank you for recovering. So, wow, Corky slipping all the way through here. That feels unusual. Like, in fact, it was
It would be,
unusual, and that was in fact wrong, not just unusual.
Oh, no. Your gut reaction was right, though.
You're right. It would have been weird if Corky had got this far through, but alas, well, actually, I'm quite happy he's not, because I've cast a lot of Corky recently. Either
I'm
way,
getting so bored of Corky, mate. I'm going.
well, like, there's a reason people are picking it. He's very good. But
Very
Tom
good.
Kench was
Oh!
locked in, and Vigar. This is something I feel that has been rising up in priority a little bit. 1 or 2 picks in the LEC, quite a lot down in some of the lower divisions. I know NLC's seen it a few times. And between a Poppy, Flame Chompers, and now the Vigar cage, Aphelios and Graves have a really tough time, Jintao as well, fighting a way through all this kind of zone control.
How are the Hawks going to respond to this one? They're looking at going immediately for that Orianna. They're going to try and mix Control Mage to Control Mage, but I mean, Veigar just has that inevitability factor, especially with a Jinx as well. Like, this is a very scary Rascal Jester comp for when they hit late game. They do lack a lot of CC, so I'm feeling like they want a Rakan or something of that nature. They don't really need the front line anymore. They need something that's great crowd control. What kind of avenue do you think Rascal Jester could go in?
I mean, like the Leona is on the table still. Secret, such a good Leona. I feel like you could potentially go Thresh and match the Hook champion. Secret Bard being hovered, that's pretty exciting as well. And with the way Rascal Jesters are at right now, they've got a lot of like zone control CC. It's not a lot of like engage CC, as you were kind of calling out there. But in some ways, maybe they don't have to, because you just have this 4-man crew of whoever they fancy. I mean, a set would work just fine for the purposes.
Set works great.
There's more CC. And also, if you're diving into set, Veigar, Jinx, Poppy, you're going to have a horrible time of it. And they can just set up court in whatever lane or objective they're around and let the Tryndamere do whatever the hell he likes on the other side. It's a bit more standard, I'd like to say, around the Hawks side. You know, they've got the Graves to a bit of shove, but Orianna or Aphelios, pretty straight front to back. The only thing I'd like to call out there a little bit for you is that is a ghost pick for Kanatsu, who wants to be able to have that to match into the Tryndamere, who's also running that ghost.
Yeah, gonna want that rundown potential, really expecting that he might have the favor. And in the previous split, Kanatsu did typically get on top of that. I also just want to recap on something that you had mentioned about Secret Set. That actually really works well with the synergy between Veigar and the set. Obviously, you can ult into the cage and it will actually CC chain into it if you get it right. So there's a lot of options there between these champions and kind of the mobility and the way that they can play these team fights. I do think it is on Hawks. I completely agree with that point that you set up, though. It's Rascal Jester kind of looking for them to either find the angle if they can find it, or they can just play the poke comp and just wait for the Jesters, wait for the Hawks round to come into them. Whereas on Hawks side, I mean, they need to get that Xin Zhao going very early, I feel. Like, they need to get a successful gank pre-6 and start snowballing a lane early, or I could see them getting into a difficult spot, and it can't be mid, because you're just not going to get onto it. It's an Orianna. It's really a struggle.
Yeah, I can agree with that. And, you know, there's a conversation I think has been had around Twitter and around some of the Vigar men. So Vigar V2, obviously one of the coaches for C9, was saying, look, Vigar, yes, you've got the infinite AP scaling, but interesting, you're more of a mid-game 2-item champion, because you're kind of there before people get the ability to hit you with one ability and chunk you out, and you have to retreat, because Vigar doesn't actually have the greatest range. So the later the game goes and the more incidental poke like makes you miserable, the worse Vigar feels. So obviously in that mid game where you're not going to get chunked out quite as hard, quite as quickly, and the ability for your cage to just hold people in place, and then you have just the nuke that other people can't match at that point in the game, is pretty strong. So I know my eyes will be on that a little bit once, you know, you've got 2 items on Jinx, 2 items on the Vigar, you've got Poppy and set to play bouncers. Like, I really enjoy what Rascal Jester pulled out with a little bit of creativity here. I just need to see whether it can match up against the significantly more standard stuff that Hawks have drafted, because, you know, they've got their own options. They've certainly got the damage. It's just a matter of seeing whether they can play through some of the unusual answers that Rascal Jesters have, I feel.
I mean, those unusual answers are gonna be that Veigar. It's gonna be this kind of, I mean, Poppy jungle. Like last time, we used to see Poppy jungle from time to time, but it's normally when you have terrain-based champions, like a Jarvan somewhere, or a Talia, or some way of actually setting up for the terrain that they can make it throughout the game. I remember we saw a lot of Talia Poppy bot for a period of time, just because it was that kind of cheese bot lane that had really nice synergy baked into itself. we haven't got that for the Jesters here. So Hachimecha is going to have to find those good angles, find the walls, find the terrain around that he can actually benefit from. Obviously, though, in this early stages, Blank should be getting a pretty early head start against Poppy, though, in the jungle farming place. They can rotate straight through. I mean, honestly, when you just kind of have a look at just the general game state, I'm going to be very interested to see which is one of these lanes that really opens up, because outside of this bot laning, you've got a mild advantage with the Jinx over the Aphelios with range. It's not really... It's honestly, this is a really even game. Initialized. This is a very even game state. A lot of the lanes are very 50-50 matchup worthy.
Yeah, for sure. You could see Blitzcrank there. Blitzcrank-san offering a 5% advantage over to sides of the Hawks. Got that 55% win potential, at least off the stats that the robot of the LJL has managed to acquire. But I kind of tend to agree with you, and honestly, I like a little bit of a cheese option here. I was chatting with Nightmare, of course, and he was talking with a few of the pro players, sort of around sort of NLC Div 1, Div 2, some of the things they'd run in the past, and like Poppy Veigar as a combo is disgusting. But even as a bot lane duo, because Veigar puts down the cage and Poppy charges you into it, it's just an Ivia Poppy all over again.
It really is.
It's so nasty. So like for all the AI is like, yeah, I'm not sure about these. There's some synergies here for Rascal Jester that I think makes this a lot. Like honestly, maybe it's just because I enjoy the slight creativity of it. I think I'd probably prefer Rascal Jester's comp. I'm not sure where you're at, Lexi.
I don't know. Whenever I see Aphelios, I always feel like there's always just a factor. There's always that background factor. But
it's
there's
also your boy Marble playing it.
Yes, it's also Marble playing it. And that's a player I'd love for us to highlight for a split second, because this guy is coming into if you look at the lineup, every other player kind of has a lot to prove on the side of the Hawks. Kunatu made the finals in his rookie season. Obviously on Rascal Jester going all the way, even making it through the Juggernaut match and everything. Never actually got the W because DFM were DFM, but obviously pretty big. Blank returning back to us. Dasher, MVP caliber player. Reiner went to Worlds and was arguably one of the best ones. Marble came off of an undefeated run in Academy and then picked straight up by the Hawks. How insane is that?
I just want to look over the guy's stats recently as you was chatting about it. It's like, wow. And it's like, he has one competitive loss in his career period, and that was like the game on... Friday. There we go. Took me a moment to remember the days of the week. There we go. That's a bad sign. Esports life, where days of the week mean nothing to you, only whether there are games playing or not. Casting life. Anyway, but yeah, aside from that, this guy has been undefeated. He is 12-1 all time. Yes, a lot of those were Academy games, but the guy has been a real star pickup, I think is the phrase we're looking for. This guy we got a lot of hopes for. He's that kind of rookie wonder kid we're looking to see a lot out of, as Dasher gets a big chunk onto a recap in mid lane, but of course there is the teleport to allow a bit of a reset. In fact, you've got a little bit of an engaging bot side as the turnaround coming through from both of these supports, making that one a relatively even trade. And back to Marble, you know, this is a guy who we've got a lot of high hopes for, who was the kind of star of this incredible V3 Academy team, that's now made their way to being not just an Academy team, but the main team for V3, but sans Marble.
Yes, and I think that's going to be a very important thing. Obviously, that is going to be a narrative point for us, ladies and gentlemen, just to see Marble versus Rascal versus V3. See how it goes. Blank, he's been caught out here.
That cage was genius, and now that's so many stuns for Blank. He's going to try and get the recap flashing away, but Blank has got a 3 talents, right? First blood comes through, and the Triumph feed is going to make it very difficult. Hachimecha does get at least 1 kill back, but he's got the mana, and Dash has got none left. He just needs to get one more wall bang, but does not be able to get it. The heroic charge out of, or rather on cooldown, so no way to get that. It's a 2-for-1 in favor of Hawks. Summoners burnt from literally everybody in that little 2v2 skirmish in mid.
Yep, and the support players wanted to get involved in some capacity, so they did support to combat. That was crazy huge, but that box, as you perfectly put at the very beginning, changed the dynamics on this fight. Dasher had no mana for most of this fight, so a huge amount of this damage is just done through Dasher auto attacks. And if I could actually have a counter going, I'd love to, because obviously this block cancels the back. It also prevents Dasher from getting his full combo in. So then it comes around and it's just like, Blank, what can you do? They find it. Obviously, Hachimecha, we know how this goes now. But this was just so well played from the side of the Hawks to actually just kind of enable so many micro auto attacks, not canceling one or two of those autos. Could have been the difference between going parity and then maybe not actually even getting the kill onto HAWKS. 1-on-1 would have been dire for the Hawks in that scenario, because if you're Rascal Jester, you're like, yeah, no, we can scale, we can just play around, this is okay, we've got Veigar going. Especially when you look at the CS department of these two mid laners, Dasher is definitely coming out on top on the early game. It's going to be important for Recap to try and find those good angles and options. And I mean, if that cage is a sign of things to come, Initialize, you're going to be rewarded very well.
I completely agree, and in fairness, the only thing I will call out there that is big, because, you know, Dasher, this superstar for the Hawks, who has been so good, but kind of stuck 1v9ing a lot over the last couple years, it has been his ability to just win lanes like this. It's another return gank in mid. Now Recap has been forced out of lane 3 times in a row. He teleports back in, he dies in a 2v1 or a 2v2, he now dies in a 3v1, and the Hawks in this early game so much more proactive than we saw on Friday. Blank and Dasher pairing up in a way we were hoping for when we saw this roster.
Yeah, and this time the Hawks are not even playing around Kinatsu. They're actually they're going, you know what? No advantage is found there. Let's go through and try and find it somewhere else. It's going through this mid lane, and oh my god, Marble, that's just a clean combo. Get the max damage through. He's probably gonna, no, he's not gonna reset. He's recently gone back. So, hey, why not just push out the lane, make sure that they can't get more turret plates? And he's against Soul, which is not going to be an easy matchup. This is not a player who's going to be more kind to you.
This could be a bit of turnaround here, as that's a Super Mega Death Rocket, but the Graviton Binding Eclipse does buy space. I think if that hadn't been there was a flash for a rocket or two, and that would have been a very dead Aphelios, but gonna be just okay. He's down about a wave or so, of course. Sol, exceptional, secret, exceptional, and that has caused some trouble, but it's the mid lane where a lot of this bleeding has happened. 0-2-1 is Recap, down 30 CS. You got a 2-0-1 Orianna, who is absolutely a big win condition in this game. If you could start with all these melee champions between the Poppy, the Set, even the Tryndamere, where you can just hit them all with a big ultimate, you've got a very nice setup as HAWKS, just looking to be obnoxious around Kinatsu here, dashing over the wall to cause him some trouble, and the Herald's been started, and we might be due a little bit of a fight, but Rascal Jester's just deciding, yeah, we really don't want this one.
Yeah, and what's interesting to also identify is Soul's going back now. I wouldn't be too surprised if we see a lane swap coming out now from top to bot. See if they want to play around and set up for the next one. No, they're just going to reset and go back. I'm a little surprised that we saw Soul going back at the same time to match Secret as well going back, but he didn't hit an item spike or anything, so he just a surprising back from me. I thought we were going to see some cool things happening Initialize. I wanted some cool stuff to happen, but it didn't happen. As it currently stands, though, Dasher is definitely coming out on top of this mid lane now. Recap looks like he is struggling in the CS department, considering that Dasher is on about 10 CS per minute. Recap is
that's what you get for being forced out of lane 3 times, right? Like, he had to back a little early, having been chunked out. He teleported back in. He dies in that 2v2.
But he's just been struggling with the laning
he dies
phase.
again. That's like a solid 2-3 waves you lose as a result of those plays. So for all, yeah, that's sad for Recap, and there's certainly some things I'm sure he'll want to go back and VOD review. I want to give credit over to the Hawks as well, right? Like, they played that early game really well. They got proactive. They've got the veteran superstar of their team in a great position as Dasher is put into the cage, but no real way to follow up his HAWKS. Didn't feel like burning the flash to get onto that, and now a little bit of a turnaround. There's the phase rush coming through, but going to be just fine. He'll be heading down towards the spot side river. Remember, with Blank, with the Herald inventory, could definitely look to get something occurring on the bot side of this map, as he is going to spot out this Poppy, who throws down the Steadfast Presence and will have a hammer, but decides against it. We're left with just a little bit of skirmishing and tension drawing in that bot side of the map.
Always weird when a Graves considers proxy farming and a Tryndamere. It's always a weird game when that's considering going through the vein. But anyway, that's not going to happen. It looks like most of our players are actually just going to reset around. Dragon does look like it's got about 45 seconds left on it. We don't have a timer, so I can't guess, but when the gray comes up, it's normally not too far away. Herald being put down. That looks like it's going to be first turret going around. It's just a little early because we haven't got this dragon, so it's going to be important to see who gets priority.
Ooh, wow, that's a lot of gold now onto Dasher. That's 4
Yeah.
plates. You need a whole tower this early on in the game. You can see it in the gold lead.
Only 11 minutes.
That's exactly 1,500 gold. A lot of that will be in the mid jungle. You can just see exactly where it is. There's some bit of a discrepancy in bot where Sol has managed to do really well to get ahead of the laners of Secret.
Dasher, don't go back. Dasher, don't go back if you want this dragon.
They don't. He's got teleport. He'll be just fine. They've got the ward over the wall, and honestly, with everyone else on the reset from Rascal Jester, I think he'll be okay. And considering he's got Ludens off that back, probably worth an attempt, even if it might force the teleport to make him come back in. He did just teleport into mid lane, so he is around, and no way to stop that one. A Secret just went beyond.
No.
Blank looking to see whether it's a showstopper angle. Is sort of one there. Gets a big face breaker at the end of it all. Remember, Blank's got that Crescent Guard doing a lot to buy space and time. Hatchemetcha into the wall, but look at that cage doing so much work. Blank over the wall, survives the primordial burst, and Rascal Jesters go in, but don't get as much as they were done. Now Dasher in a 1v3, throwing out the shockwave and getting a lot of damage down, but Jester's burnt a lot there, didn't manage to even get a single kill as they lose the mid lane turret as well as all of that.
Yeah, and I mean, a huge amount of why that went so good reasonably, well, for most of that fight for the Jesters until the very end is Hatchemetcha just poppy-ulted Dasher immediately out of the fight before the skirmish began, and it allowed them to kind of play all these angles. I mean, Blank went incredibly low on that Xin Zhao, and it looked rather concerning for them for a period of time. Might be like, okay, we're gonna have to trade something for something here, though. Looks like they're considering and thought the better of it because Reiner was back into this lane, so they're gonna reset. But it's completely based on Hatchemetcha why that fight could have gone better. Sadly, they weren't able to find it, and that was an angle where they really needed to find at least one kill. They needed to find something there, either a kill onto Dasher, kill onto Hatchemetcha, or a kill onto rather, probably Sol. Because just get gold on, and I mean, actually, that's the point now, right? We need to start getting gold onto Recap. We need to start getting gold onto Sol now, because these are two of their main carries here, and it's not like this Tryndamere is going to do much. Like, I know, split push, side lane, pressure. That's their goal. That's their job, and Kinatsu's is kind of prevent that and then try and deal with the issue.
Yeah, you're definitely right. Like, obviously, like this Graves has gone for a hull breaker first to boost as well, like to really index into. I need to be able to manage this Tryndamere, who is notorious at that 1-2 item mark, be able to run down whoever he is in the side lane. But I think that's really smart. What's the word? Itemization there from the Graves. We do hit a pause. Sadness for us here on the cast, but it does give us a little bit more time. It looks like I know and Kinatsu both ran Ghost at some points. There's been a little bit of skirmishing going on there, so I'm kind of right. Like, this Tryndamere that's supposed to be a win condition in the side lane. I think at least what will happen is the fact that Kinatsu has built that hull breaker, has built towards the steel caps. It's at least delaying the inevitability of a Tryndamere in a side lane. And at that by that point, you've delayed to the point where there's Orianna already at 2-0-1. We've already got that first out, that first Drake. It gives you more space to breathe and allow those carries to scale rather, and that will be interesting to see whether they can pull it off. I mean, on the other side for Rascal Jesters, they've got some work to be doing here. I feel, Lexi. Like, yes, you've got nearly 4 plates onto Sol, but he's gonna have a hard time. I feel like getting a lot of this work done if these fights keep happening the way they are.
I completely agree. It is on the Jesters now to be the proactive team. They need to be not only proactively finding things, they need to be better at reacting. Because honestly, the Hawks have been controlling the tempo of this game, and it's not particularly fast when we're only 40 minutes in, and like we've got 2 dragons, 4 kills in total, 1 turret. They've unlocked Dasher. They unlocked Dasher extremely early on. But then other than that, Sol and Secret have kind of had control of the bot lane territory for most of this game. They've been at least able to funnel some gold, but just Marble hasn't fallen far behind. But Reiner here.
Could be in a spot of ball, of course. Does have the dredge line and managed to buffer out of the face breaker. Always a little bit of a, like who draws first situation, right? Where if you dredge line before the face breaker comes through, you get pulled out of it. But if you face breaker first, just the dredge line's going through before it connects to a tower, you're in bad news. So it's even tower plates across the borders. Actually, both top laners managed to secure a couple of plates themselves. But that's the big difference here, being the plates cashed in mid. The only difference is that a couple of those plates weren't collected by the looks of that gold total for the side of Hawks. Hachimecha and Secret, though, going on a bit of a roam to see whether they can get on top of Kinatsu and maybe contest this Herald.
Yeah, and that's also why when you just say that, if you assume ideal circumstances, that's at least over 400 gold over into Soul's pocket as well that he has over Marble. So with a wave, or about a wave or so of advantage he's had as well, that's about 500-600 worth of gold that he's just there. That's where one of those daggers is just coming from. Just raw dagger power for Soul at the moment. I don't feel like that's going to trend on, but I mean, it's going to be important around this next Herald fight, as currently Kanatsu pulled out that lane. They've got a whole wave going around, so the Hawks should be looking to try and gain full control because I know it's nowhere near.
Lordy lord, there's the shockwave coming through. Secret gets pulled in as well. Now comes the rest of the Hawks looking to contest in. It's a good cage though to disengage. And Sol is down the flash, so is Secret, but they don't fall down. It does force a reset out of the AD carry though, and that surely gives Hawks free reign to start up this Rift Herald.
What a huge shockwave from Dasher. That was mental. Like, not fair, mate.
That is old school season 3 Orianna strats where you stand in that kind of bush and wait for people to walk in and just shockwave over the wall. Assassin Orianna strategies versus old school supports. And
it's been good since season 3. Season 2, really, when a world champion player of an Orianna one trick for, well, he wasn't really that, but
he played a lot of Orianna.
Played a lot. Well, he made it. Toys made it famous, that Orianna during that worlds in season 2. That was the one which changed my life on Orianna. It made me see the light that was a robotic woman. Don't know where I should be going with that one, but
you know, I know
going for aggressive
the LJL.
play.
I know we're casting the LJL, and therefore some anime references are expected. But that that kind of like Android 18 style reference, not really what I was expecting this early on a morning on a Sunday, as we've got ourselves a dragon start, and Secret's into the back line, gonna try and pull them all in. That's into the cage as well. Poppy steadfast press do a lot of work, but the turnaround beginning to come through. I know though is undyingly angry, gets on top of Blank as well, and the Hawks get flanked beautifully by Secret. But can that collateral damage finish off who they need it to? It will not. And they'll be able to get a hold of a dragon and manage to bring this game back to a significantly more even standpoint. Only 1,000 gold down now.
Oh man, you would love to have a stopwatch if you were Dasher in this one, because it's all about Secret. He's the man of this one and goes straight onto Dasher. Yes, there's an immediate flash straight out, but it doesn't matter because look at where the rest of the team are. They're just getting CC chained, and that's all she wrote. Marble on the back line is trying his absolute best. The problem was, he wasn't in position at the very, very beginning of this fight. Missed maybe a little bit of DPS, which I don't think would have been a huge effect really throughout this fight. They weren't able to pick anything up, and the Jesters took full control. Secret, take a bow, and while recap, you didn't have the best cage. It looked a lot better because actually what that cage did is it prevented them from coming in to the side of the Jesters from the Hawks angle, rather than actually normally playing the opposite side, which is it's trying to cage people in, trying to make them feel awkward. Actually, it did the opposite. It played defensively for them. It allowed the Jesters to gain full control of that team fight. They won it. They got the dragon. Hawks are going to try and respond as best as possible, though, on the resets.
They have got that Herald they picked up earlier. It will get them another tower, which will take them ahead in that tower game. Of course, they already got the mid lane turret. Recap getting a shove on in that top side. He, of course, not the fastest tower taker without a little bit more AP, as I know, is here. Going to see Kinatsu face checking, but Blank is around. That means I don't think he's going to want this fight. Here comes Hachimecha alongside the rest of the Jesters to try and stall this push. Dasher over the side as well as Marble and Reiner take the opportunity to get a wave shoved in mid lane, while the Jesters did sort of cycle their way over towards that bot lane tier 2. They do manage to clear out the wave, but lose a bit of a chunk on the mid lane turret as a result.
But they're still not gonna stop. They get that turret. I know it's still pushed up, and if you look at where Secret is, he's just currently using his Hex Flash. He goes all the way around the map. Soul has just cleared out Raptors, and the rest of the Rascal Jesters are still just trying to get stock of after they just got that winning team fight. They remember they won the last team fight, and now they're just getting immediately thrown back into that. Herald from the side of the Hawks was great at kind of preventing the tempo, really changing the momentum of this game for the side of the Rascal Jesters. There's still a 1k gold lead over on the side of the Hawks. they're still pushing their advantages. They've got the tower advantage at the moment. And if you look at where this map is set up, you absolutely know for a fact the Hawks are planning to play the long game with this one now. They have to be to a degree, because if you look at the Dragon, you look at the Soul, and you look at the towers that they've taken, they're going to be pushing in deep, get that deep vision along the bot red side of the Rascal Jesters, and they can just play around that. And then whenever they feel like they need to, they've got they've only got single TP. So if anyone's going to have to be playing side lane pressure, it's going to have to be Dasher. Because remember, Kinatsu, as you highlighted in that pick and ban phase initialized, he went for Ghost. Doesn't really feel like it's done much this game so far. We're still going to have to wait for those big Ghost moments, you know, where the Graves gets to run down the whole team.
It's that, but remember, he's gone for that hull breaker build. He's all about the side laning, and again, it's looking like we've got like naval warfare actually between the top lanes. Zyno has also gone for that hull breaker to match.
Split the map.
Exactly, and then the thing is that Ghost is it's more to counter the Tryndamere, as far as I've been told, led to understand, is the fact that when Tryndamere pops the Ghost, you need to pop the Ghost as well in order to be able to match the movement speed and escape effectively. And when he's spinning slashes, you quick draw, and you can manage to keep the same distance. And that's the idea, is that those summons are likely being kept basically purely for each other. You don't want to run them in the team fights if you can help it, so you can play out the side lanes a bit more safely. And so my eyes do inevitably turn for the Jesters a little bit to like, okay, can you hold on around these objectives with your kind of command and control comp? And then on top of that, what can you get done on a side lane with this 2-item Tryndamere, who has not gone towards Navori Quickblade Second, not gone towards Crit, he's gone towards the Hull Breaker for pure split pushing power.
Yeah, well, and that's pure split pushing power. Let's see how it's going to work out, because neither of our two top laners have actually been able to push out a wave. This Dragon's going to be coming up in about 45 to 30 seconds, ladies and gentlemen. We don't have a timer. It's all about looking at the little mini map in our screens and trying to remember when it goes grey, you get a minute.
Maximum,
that's
something like that. Yes, it's grey is a minute, yellow is 15 seconds. Hachimecha being chased out of the jungle by Kinatsu as well. And the important thing here, I think it's worth noting, is yes, I know on that side, definitely on a bit of a flank angle here, seeing whether there's some options. More important on top of that as well is the fact that the Hawks definitely have control over this river. And remember last year, Lexi, how many times did the two of us say the Hawks could not set up vision around objectives? Thus far, doing a pretty good job of at least holding on to some control. There are some water in front of that dragon pit that means Rascal Jester can see what's going on, as Kinatsu will face check too. That's an ignite coming down as well. But here come the rest of the Hawks to try and turn the front. Hachimecha onto Rhino on the back end of this. Aina has got the Undying Rage, hasn't had to use it quite yet. The rest of the fight continuing. Secret getting a massive showstopper into that event horizon, but there's just not enough burst. And the Jesters being forced out of here with a couple summons. Another cage coming down from Recap, which is continuing to be really obnoxious with all of it done. Aino's going to have to reset. He doesn't have teleport. Undying Rage was popped, and this should surely be the Hawks to take in a 4v5.
Dasher still has ult. Aphelios still has ult. There's still a lot of ults to play around with. Most of the big ones aren't here, but Aino is coming back in this fight.
He's going to have another option on the side. Remember, there's no teleport, though. That is the keeper's vote to keep people out, and that means the Drake secured because there is no smite. And yes, there was no one dead. Yes, they got the chunk onto the top laner, but no, they did not secure the dragon because Poppy had a hammer to knock people out of there.
That was so well played from Hachimecha to find it onto Blank to actually get the push there. But are they going to lose something, though, even with getting that play? That's the question.
Might still lose this mid lane tier 2. It's being taken pretty low as Blank has to start thinking about getting out of this cage. Takes a fair chunk, but he's tanky enough at this point with a Warden's Mail, additional piece of armor, those Merc Treads as well. That's not a damaged Jin Zhao build. That's not a Sterax. That's just raw defensive stats after the core drink, yeah.
I mean, that's also just fancy footsteps from Blank and from Aino. Honestly, both of these two players are Blank not taking too much damage in that cage. Aino just popping that goes really early on and matching it. But I think this is where you just have to look at Hachimecha and just go, look at him. He's not attacking and they're just out of vision and they're playing that game. Like, there was no way for Blank to react to that. No way. Outside of just having fifth sense vision, or if they were able to secure vision inside the dragon pit. That would be the only one. Something though I would like to move on to though, because I think this is far more important, and it relates to that first big team fight we saw, which Rascal Jesters came out on top of, and with Dragon Soul Point on the cards, I think it's going to be a good one. Dasher finally has a stopwatch. That's going to be very important because you remember when they went for that big play on Secret, it was straight onto Dasher and a huge amount of damage has been taken out. We're still waiting for Marble. We're still waiting for Kanatsu. These two young players of the Japanese league to really pop off. I have to wait and see if they're able to find it.
Nasty! They get a huge pick onto Reiner, but now the turnaround might be going through his Ino onto Kinatu, gets a solo kill in the side lane. Tryndamere online. It's a 2 for none for the Jesters around the map. Top lane, or the bot lane, find the top laners, and the mid lane pick coming through for the Jesters. Great stuff from them, but I don't know whether they'll be able to secure too much more off it.
Well, I mean, Ino still gets to free push, and unless anyone goes and responds to him, he's just going to start pushing into their base. That's a serious concern that the Hawks are going to have to deal with. And look at this, Dasher has had to rotate around, so this actually gives them the option to actually start looking at, if they wanted to, this Baron as we come into this replay. The big one is just this cage. Like, the cage into the CC combo chain. Reiner just has no way to respond to this. Really nice attempt from Secret there, but I mean, it's just cage. It's just Recap did good cage. Thumbs up as we come into this Baron fight. Ino is behind them and he's taking that mid lane farm, but you guys don't want to be on the opposite side. You don't want to attack them when the Tryndamere has Ghost but has no ult. So if they're gonna do it, they need to do it when Ino has no ult. Or if they're gonna do anything, maybe just do this Baron. I'm not against them just doing this.
It might be a bit of a counter Baron option, seeing whether there's some resets. Yeah, they are going to do this.
I like this.
Of course, Jesters didn't actually reset, so this will now be a 4v5.
Look at how quickly they're taking it.
Ino's not going to be there, remember. Secrets around the side. Yeah, they are going to be able to make this a fight, but Hachimecha only has got the Keeper's Verdict, needs to knock people out of the pit. Doesn't really hit onto it. That's a big deal. Actually, I take it back. That is blank knocked out, but a big turnaround onto the jungler of the Jesters. Hachimecha down for the count. Kinatsu taken pretty low. Ino going to the backside. It will be the Primordial Burst that secures it. Oriana is the one that gets the Baron, but can they get out of the fight as Ino running through as many people as he can? The Barbarian King on a rampage. Recap trying to hump forward. Here comes Secret looking for the flank. Marble gets past the event horizon but needs to survive. The Binding Eclipse keeps Dasher alive, but that will be 4 dead in trade for that Baron. It's a messy one, I think, Lexi.
I mean, honestly, Ino played freaking MVP of that. Pop the Ghost, pop the Ultimate, took so much damage from the side of the Hawks. And survived and got multiple kills throughout that skirmish. Just absolutely having a stellar performance. I'm getting Nocturne vibes from Ino right now. You know when he had that pop-off Nocturne game and controlled the pace of it? Feeling that again. Honestly, we have to begin out with Hachimecha immediately taking out Blank into this team fight and rotating it around. Yeah, he takes a lot of it, but it actually prevents this Baron from going down. It actually prevents a lot of what the side of the Hawks wanted to do. Now you just watch Ino. This is the Ino show now. Begins out with Hachimecha, ends off with Ino, and that's 2 Japanese players jostling to be the best in their role at the moment. And hey, they're putting up caliber performances where you could at least see it at the moment in time. Yeah, this is really nice from Marble. Obviously, he's able to chain a lot of abilities and a bunch of stuff. Words escaped me there because that's how good Marble was. But even then, it's still a 1-for-1. Soul got the pickup on it. And this Jinx is now 3 items.
Time to replace an S with a U, because we've got ourselves a Dragon Soul fight coming up. This will be the Hextech Soul for Rascal Jesters, who've got that massive soul point to play around. Dragon's been started. Ino has also been spotted on a flank here. Can Hawks find a way to deal with all of the CC, all of the zone control? They've got to watch out for Secret, watch out for Ino on the flanks. It is a death ball from the Hawks. That shockwave the last time at the Baron pit forced Sol to flash. If that had landed, it might have been a very different fight. This time, Dasher needs to be looking for a bigger ultimate, as that is a decent chunk there for the Super Mega Death Rocket. Secret as well, charging the Hex Flash. Ino over the wall, potential options still. That will be continued fighting. That's the cage onto 2, but it's a turnaround of the Hachimecha, who's in trouble. Recap's gone golden, but he needs to stay alive. Has to flash away from the wind, becoming lightning. Secret's into the backside, and the Soul has been excited. He can start running people down. Needs to get some kills. Ino undying in his absolute fury. Kinatu over the wall will be able to get a shutdown onto the Tryndamere. Dragon resets. Secret is pulled back in. Soul, I apologize, will be taken off as that Binding Eclipse gets another Marble. Show Soul how it's done.
They found the angles, they weathered the storm, and the fact that Aino found a decent spot to go in, but the rest of his team had been chunked so low at the beginning of that fight, they weren't able to find the angles, and the Hawks just completely turn it. Also, the ult from Blank in that fight, I think prevented over 5,000 worth of damage. I'm being a bit over-exaggerating,
I
obviously.
think we've got ourselves a bit of an ending attempt here. There's a lot of death time as Secret and Hachimecha needs to do a lot of work here to hold the waves in place. Hachimecha went in to try and clear as much of it as he can. Secret face-breaking the wave as well, trying to pull them away from the Nexus towers, and will do so. Hawks will be unable to end right now, but now Secret in a difficult position. Needs to find a way past Kanats, but of course, he is pretty tanky as this set. Will burn the flash and will be able to retreat out from that flanking maneuver. Heroics from Hachimecha and Secret to hold on to that. What is nice attempt on the steal there.
But I mean, as we come into this replay, a huge amount of this, obviously, Reiner gets taken very low, and actually, they stutter this initiation from Reiner because he flashes forward, misses the dreadline, gets the Urgot, but it doesn't matter because Soul isn't in this fight for the first beginning part, and then Blank just ultimates immediately and does this. Look at Aino. For so long, he's not got a good spot, then he goes in, and he's like, oh man, you guys aren't quite going in at the same time. It's so discoordinated from the side of the Jesters. I mean, huge shotgun gold also goes over, as you mentioned previously, but now when it gets down to this, like, who of the Jesters can do anything at that moment in time? It was so uncoordinated from them, which outside of this, most of this game hasn't really been the case. They've always been on the front foot. It seemed like when they stuttered a little bit, the Jesters fumbled and the Hawks picked it up beautifully. It's also great to see that some of the more key members that need to start picking up more gold and more kills, they're actually getting that. Kinatsu obviously is now level 16. Multiple items have come out as well. Marble 15, Dasher 16. It's starting to come together for the Hawks. Has inevitability hidden, and you've mentioned this. Obviously, this Veigar, 2-item champion. He's up to that 3-item point now, and he's got a broken stopwatch. It's not terrible. And no.
Veigar's scales, it's like he does. Like, don't get me wrong, Veigar's damage is going to continue to be really, really obnoxious the later this game goes. It's just like you saw in that fight, you could chunk him out, and actually, Dash as well got to hit a shockwave onto the flashless Soul. He didn't get to escape the shockwave this time. It did shut him down despite him being excited. That kind of thing here is Secret's going to get pulled back, does have the Haymaker though to buy some space. The Moonlight Vigil not quite going to be enough. And Rascal Jester has managed to retreat, but with Baron coming up shortly, it will definitely give the Hawks opportunity to set up control. I know when Kinatsu in the side lane though, gonna be a continued struggle right now as the mocking shout comes through. Aino's gonna be able to start chunking out this inhibitor tower, and there's no way Disgraves at this point in the game can deal with the Tryndamere.
No one on the side really of the Hawks can single-handedly deal with it. Maybe if Blank was like level 18 and 3 items, 4 items, maybe Xin Zhao. But honestly, Tryndamere at this game point, this is what he's meant to do. This is the whole reason you play the champion. He's hit level 18 now. He's not going to get much stronger now.
He's just going to take out this inhibitor. There's nothing you can do to stop him. And Aino takes out the inhibitor turret, and Rascal Jester say, okay, we'll start the Baron then. Give it a go. You really want to go into all of our damage, all of our zone control around here. And the Hawks, yes, they got the win. Yes, they got the inhibitor turret. Yes, they tried to look for the end, but they didn't. And now they're in a bit of a bind where they've lost an inhibitor as well, where they've got this Tryndamere who can play the sideline out like this and be a constant, like, nuclear threat in this bot lane, saying, if you leave, we can just hit the big red button and your base is completely destroyed.
Yes, absolutely. But they've also got the inevitability factor of, hey, we've still got Soul Point in our back pocket. Like, the Jesters genuinely still have maybe best Soul outside of Elder, obviously, on the table still for them to still get. With a Tryndamere as well, Hex Tech Soul, geez, that's a bit destructive for a lot of teams to have to deal with. However, obviously the Hawks would love to get that because it's it would actually help greatly with preventing a Tryndamere from relentlessly running you down and chopping your bits. As the game currently stands, 35 minutes in though, we are at a game point where it feels like either team could still break this open and honestly end the game with one big push. It feels rather even and competitive. As you've mentioned, both teams have inhibitors. We're currently seeing a 5v4 for the side of the Hawks, as Aino is in that top lane at the moment, and I'm surprised that the side of the Hawks aren't just like running at the side of Rascal Jester.
They're just trying to see whether they can hold control over this Dragon Pit. It would put them to soul point as well. Secret Spin pulled back in by that Shockwave, but the wall prevents him from being pulled too much further. And you're right, there is Ino taking away this top lane tier 2. He is level 18, 4 items. Kinatsu secures the Dragon. And that puts both teams now at soul point.
We're going to have a 40-minute game where we're fighting over a Dragon Soul.
Oh, I think we might be.
Is that
It's
our
3
opening
dragons
game of the
apiece.
LJL initialized for both of us?
But look with where the waves are at, the Hawks are in a difficult position. Kinatsu with no teleport has to deal with that bot lane wave. And Jesters have started up this Baron. Where is Blank? Can he find his way in to look for a steal? Moonlight Vigil goes wide. Dash over the side, gonna look for a steal, and Ino secures that somehow, some way. Hachimachi didn't even smite, by the by.
Nope. Nope, didn't need to. Didn't have to risk it. Didn't. I mean, I imagine his
I think he
trigger
might
finger
have,
was
because
ready.
that was a command attack. That was a command attack dissonance coming over the wall there from Oriana. I was like, that's quite a lot of damage.
True. I mean, just maybe he had the confidence. Papa Mecha, you know, he's just got those instincts now. It's a bit of a different game for him now. He knows exactly what he's working with.
We are still,
yes.
we're still with a gold lead that is within 1,000 gold right now. It feels like it's never gotten particularly excessive for either side. We're at soul point for each of these teams. We are at 6 towers to 6. The difference here, though, is now Jesters are the ones in the ascendancy with the Baron buff, with this Tryndamere that feels no one can deal with. It's going to get very, very scary, very, very quickly.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, 4 items for both of our mid laners at this moment in time. Soul has hit 4 items on Jinx. That is game ending point, really, in the game now. Where if a Jinx gets to just hit 1 reset, game could be over in that 1 push. They've got Baron buff. They've got it for another minute and 40. I mean, if you're the Jesters here, you want to try and end this game off of this Baron, because if you have to play around the Dragon, you've just given the Hawks an extra few minutes to really stay in this game and maybe find an option back in, because if we hit up to 40 minutes, that's when the Dragon is going to be spawning. That's when the fight is going to have to break out, because Soul Point could change everything unless you're Ino and you're in a side lane.
It's a 1-4 split, but they've got super minions shoving in the bot side, do the Jesters. That means they have so much map pressure right now, as Kinatsu will be the recipient of a mocking shout, trying to back away from this Tryndamere. In the mid lane, the cage has come down, the tower falls, Soul gets excited. I can start looking for this inhibitor and trade.
They're going to keep pushing forward. They're going to be trying to poke out and just get rid of these minions. They just need to stave off and fend the Baron buff as long as they can for the side of the Hawks. I think it's close to impossible, though. Ino's getting caught out a little bit, but they're not going to be able to catch him because Ino is a Tryndamere, so you can just dash away whenever you feel like it. They're going to get 1 more hit on that. Soul has got that rapid fire cannon, so extra long range, super easy for them to take care of. Gets excited, removes that ward. Now they're going to rotate around and look to do the choke slam. They're just going to nuzzle you, and they're going to put you to sleep with the sleeper hold initialize. I don't know why I've got all of the wrestling moves going at the moment.
Because you got set, that's why.
Yeah.
And it is feeling a bit like a Tryndamere, this massive barbarian. He'd make for a great wrestler as well.
He
But that
would,
is now that mid lane inhibitor, all inhibitor turrets down. Ino heads back towards that bot lane inhibitor. The cage comes down as well. Hawks struggling to engage through that in the choke point that is their base. That's another inhibitor that dies. Cage comes down again. Rhino's trying to find his way through and can't. And the Jesters continuing now to choke Hawks out of this game. It's been a valiant effort in the mid game, but now at this point, with their base in shambles, with the Baron that's now finally run out, it's looking increasingly dire for the Hawks.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no reason for the side of Rascal Jester to even consider moving off until they can get this last one, because look at where Ino is. They can play this game for as long as they want, because what can Hawks do? What are they threatening? What do they have? Well, potentially a flank. Let's see what Blank can do.
He's going to find his way on, but only really lands a Wind Becomes Lightning onto Hachimed, who has that steadfast presence, which means the Jin Zhao, no easy way in. Kinatsu has to try and deal with this Tryndamere. He's after the wave, not the Barbarian.
Oh, look at that. Rabadon's being brought in to really try and prevent any form of damage being put onto this Kinatsu. He's just going full tank now, grades items, because, hey, I mean, Tryndamere will either kill you or you just outlive their initial burst and then you can just respond back with your own of what you're going to be doing. Yeah, his ultimate has a finite number, but look at it. It looks like... Oh, Hawks. Oh, God, you really want to play for this dragon, don't you?
Yeah, in fairness, I can understand why you might want to. The problem is they need to get these waves in order before they do it. Look, but their map, they're down 2 inhibitors. They're down that final inhibitor turret. And Rascal Jesters are going to be here on time. They are going to be able to set up with the Poppy, with the Veigar, with the set, and make this incredibly difficult. This would be Soul for them. They're going to teleport in, but it's just gone. It's too late. Blank's going to go in, but he's going to take so much damage. That formerly static Shiv ability doing as much work as they can. The slows, the sparking, chaining lightning damage, making things difficult. Dashes onto the side. He gets a good shockwave. He's not going to get any kills, so it's only onto 2 non-important members at this point in the game. As I know, into the backline, it's a 1v4 he goes into.
Marble.
He gets out until Marble gets one back around. Look at Sol, though, trying to trade forwards. Kinatu goes over the wall, going to try and blow up as many people as he can. And maybe, just maybe, they've done it. Sol be damned. And I don't understand. Hawks find the fight there, despite what should have been a massive advantage. But now look at the base. They've got themselves super minions pouring in to come and deal with these Nexus turrets. And with at least 2 members remaining and Recap teleporting out, he gets away. Nexus turret plus Soul in trade for a 1 fight nominally for the Hawks, but it doesn't allow them to win the game, and they are still in a dire position.
Yeah, absolutely. And while this went great, because look at the side, Blank came in, pops us into our ultimate, prevents a huge amount of damage from coming through. Great. Okay. So Rascal Jester have already got exactly what they were coming for now. This is them looking for something huge shockwave coming out. But where does it go so badly? Well, look at Ino. He's just in the middle, and this whole rest of this time, Recap can't really do anything. Secret can't really do anything. Hachimecha can't really do anything. It's honestly just Soul kind of going, okay, well, this random teammate of mine is kind of taking a lot of damage, so I'll try and get into a position where I can try and do something. But the issue is, Rascal Jesters took so much damage through the Dasher ultimate of Orianna, it prevented them from really being able to find anything else. However, it didn't matter because they got that Soul point, and that's what they came for. That's what they wanted, and the fact that their base was just cracked open, Hawks weren't able to play around effectively, and in a more ideal world for the Hawks, they would have done this, but Baron...
Gonna be the start. That last fight, Dasher and Marble were untouched. I know there was Valkinatsu on the side, gonna try and chase him off. Baron resets. And Ino goes back to play through mid lane. And remember, they do have the Soul, do Rascal Jesters. So much additional damage, so much more difficult to deal with as the Hawks feel like they have to pull back. Reiners will have his back stopped. And now Jesters can start on the Baron. They've had to send multiple people back to try and deal with Tryndamere, and that means they're going to lose this Baron. And Hawks, yes, you've won some fights, but you're just losing out in the objective game, I feel.
Okay. I think, Initialize, it is at that point in this game where either the Hawks will somehow win another team fight, and they get to end probably on that push, or Rascal Jesters are just going to end the game here. I think we're at that point in this game where it's one or the other.
Yeah.
It feels like it. With 42 minutes in this game, this might be the longest game of LJL already this season by a fair bit. I don't remember anything cracking 40 minutes, and the fact that we're beyond 40 is a surprise for me, considering the average game time of around the world has gone longer, but it's not to this extent. But Kinatsu's already seeing the pressure from this Tryndamere.
Yeah, he is. He's having to use the collateral damage to try and escape with the mocking shots coming through, a spinning slash coming afterwards. He's still got the Undying Rage. He doesn't even need to use it. It's a shut down onto the Graves. He's taken low, and now in a 4v5. All inhibitors falling. Hawks must try and defend. It is a last stand at the Alamo. And yes, we're on the other side of the world from the States, but it is absolutely that attempt. They must find a way. It's Helm's Deep. It's everything. They're going to get caged. Hatchmaker takes a choice. Reiner goes gold, but he's absolutely blown up. It's another kill for Sol on the Jinx. Final Nexus Tower falls, and down members, down structures. They will fall, and Rascal Jesters in a back and forth, absolutely neck and neck game come out in the end off objective pressure.
And what a result from the Rascal Jesters, finding that W after having maybe a less than ideal circumstance happened in their first ever game of the LJL and the first game of the 2022 season versus Destination Focus Me. They find the W in a very swingy game. It was a very competitive game throughout a lot of the different stages. It honestly, initialized at any moment, we could take snapshots and both teams could have taken that whole game towards the end, outside of the last like 10 minutes, really, where it felt like the Jesters had the tempo.
Yeah, well, once Jesters won the first Baron and managed to really secure it, it got pretty scary. The only thing I'll say that made it feel kind of difficult was like, no one could deal with that Tryndamere. No one could. No one. Like, there was a point where it's like, yeah, okay, they got the whole break in a match, but it's like, okay, Graves did his best to stall out the Tryndamere win condition with his item build.
Yep.
There was a point where that stopped working as Nymera is doing awful things off camera right now.
The Macarena, I'm imagining.
He's right over there, by the way, guys. That's an LEC caster who you can't see, who is deliberately trying to wind me up. And then there's Alexi doing this as well. I'm surrounded by fools. I love them all, though.
And the Jesters as well.
And the Jesters, absolutely. Fools and Jesters come out on top this morning. Great game, back and forth game, but a Jesters win in the end. We're going to cut to a quick break, and when we come back, JV will be joining us on the analyst desk, and we'll see you there.
Well, an exciting way to kick off the day. I don't know if it's what we expected. You know, we didn't get the predictions in before, but they might be called the Jesters, but they weren't clowning around today. And with that, I'm going to throw it over. It did feel like a bit of a trend to win kind of game.
I also want to point out, we didn't call this in-game, but you've got to remember Kinatsu for the Hawks is Rascal Jester's top laner from last year. He is the top laner they traded out for Ino. This is the guy, Kinatsu, who went to the super team of Hawks and did a really good job of stalling this Tryndamere with the whole breaker first into this Immortal Shield Bow. Did well in the team fights, tried to hold on, but Ino hit critical mass. My days, that Tryndamere in the late game became an unsolvable problem. You could see Hawks basically saying, look, we need to destroy these objective fights and try and like literally push to win off that. They nearly managed it once and couldn't quite make it well. And Dasher got fed early, was a damage threat, but there was just no one who could deal with Ino on a side lane. Even now, right, he's like, yeah, well, I've got one item, I can be a terror.
Yeah, and a huge issue that they had when they wanted to deal with Ino just became when it came around these team fights. Like, Ino just kept finding flank after flank after flank. And again, I love that fact that you brought up. Obviously, Kinatsu, former Rascal Jester's top lane. Like, the general consensus was that Rascal Jesters downgraded their top laner. I don't know anymore. Like, I don't just beat
Played very
Kinatsu
well.
in a top lane game focus, like a heavy focus game around top lane. And hey, if you're Jesters, you're feeling actually really good about your pickup right now.
Yeah, in retrospect for the Hawks, because it wasn't all bad for them. You know, it was a really close game, as you guys said.
Oh, yeah.
They definitely seemed, well, you even said it on cast, much more proactive. So do you feel like even though they lost this one, they're still much more positive after today's result rather than on Fridays?
Yes, I think they are. I think they're going to be frustrated all the same. I think in some ways they got a little bit outdrafted by Rascal Jesters playing the mad scientist. They've done this before. That Veigar became incredibly obnoxious. You saw what it comboed up with the Poppy. The Tryndamere was a serious win condition that they couldn't really snowball through, especially considering they didn't get to stack the Drakes and Hawks. Because if you look at the top of your screen, if that had been inverted, if Hawks were at Soul Point and could force the Tryndamere to come and fight into them, it would have been very different. And in fairness, Hawks did a decent job of getting those 2 early heralds, of getting the early kills onto Recap, was put miles behind. It just wasn't enough. And even when they were winning a lot of these sort of fights around objectives, it wasn't translating to big gold leads. It wasn't translating to breaking the base, aside from that one time where Secret and Hatchemecha pulled out all the stops to clear out the wave. Close game, but not quite close enough.
Yeah, and I guess I want to also ask, I'll throw this one to Master One. Do you feel like Rascal Jesters, obviously they came into this season with a lot of expectation, they did really well last year. Do you feel like you've kind of regained a bit of confidence now they've picked up a win? Or are you a little bit like, well, actually, you kind of had some iffy moments in that later mid-game when you were ahead?
I mean, J-Ro, I might have put the Hawks as my #1 team to end spring split with, but I still put the Jesters top 3, sir. So it's not like I'm dogging on the Jesters here. We're talking minutiae about the top of the top teams. This was a huge match for us. And I mean, I honestly, I kind of expected this, and we actually predicted this on the podcast. And if, ladies and gentlemen, if you're not already listening to it, you should definitely go do that, because we do a weekly podcast. Next week, I won't be on it, but Initialize and Imera with a special guest will be hooking that in there. Oh, I'm a content machine, ladies and gentlemen.
Done well. There we go.
Coming back to your point, far more importantly, the Jesters retained 4 out of their 5 members. They changed their top play. I'm not going to say which direction that's currently going, but I know had a great showing. The Jesters look fantastic. They're exceeding or matching expectations, having a very competitive game versus DFM, and then a pretty even game versus Hawks. Also from the Hawks side, yeah, they're 0-2, but they don't feel like an 0-2 team after that performance.
Yeah, definitely a lot of room for growth. And as you said, playing better than they did yesterday, if they just keep on that momentum, that trajectory, then directly they're going to start causing some problems.
No
for
more
those teams
Poppy top, please, for the Hawks. Like, they struggled.
And talking about Poppy, obviously returned back onto the Rift, this time in a more normal position, I would guess we'd say, something we'd more expect. Do you feel like Poppy jungle is going to become more prominent, considering that we do have a lot of early game junglers like Java and Jinjao?
Yeah. Look, Blank was playing in the LCK. They've been loving the Poppy jungle. I think it's really, this is a discussion that's been had by a number of coaches, ERL level and higher, which basically says this: where you could get away with first picking your jungler earlier in the season, people are starting to realize that in some ways you sometimes want to leave it till 4th pick, even go towards some of these solo lanes, which are a bit safer, honestly, to blind pick. And the problem is you have got answers like the Poppy into things like the Jarvan, into the Lee Sin, that you can, into the Xin Zhao, that can make life quite difficult. And so the ability to counter jungle picks with something like the Poppy and stymy a lot of these comps can be quite powerful. So yes, absolutely think Poppy's going to be around the meta.
Yeah, it's definitely one to watch out for. Obviously, we talked a little bit about Graves before we got into the game as well. Did pop up. Tryndamere, though, just having a better time. I feel like, I know obviously there's 5 members on the team, but Tryndamere, it just felt like kind of their show, their time to shine, because it was very hard to match.
Sorry, what was that question? I was busy chatting to our producer.
So I guess, well, actually, maybe I didn't even formulate the question, but Tryndamere obviously looked very problematic.
Devastating.
Didn't really deal with it. What would you say is kind of the pickup that teams need to adapt to really deal with that Tryndamere?
I mean, I think the obvious answer was actually have Blank give Kinatsu some more pressure around that top side. Both top laners were left alone for most of that game from their junglers. Poppy doesn't have any setup for Tryndamere. So no reason for her to really go out there unless she can get very close, ult up and immediate and do that kind of lovely combo stuff that you see in solo queue, and it looks great on Chinese TikToks. It doesn't happen in pro play. You know it doesn't unless you're like some crazy jungler, especially on Poppy. Difficult to do. So honestly, Blank should have maybe given more pre-12. Like after 12, after 11, really, that's when I start looking at Tryndamere's and going, you're kind of getting to your points where now Graves is not going to have the same kind of keep the Tryndamere in the lane, prevent him from escaping, keep him locked into the top lane. Blank had gone top, maybe that could have been a way in. This Tryndamere got to free farm for pretty much all game initialized, right? Like, I'm not crazy in thinking that. Aino got to farm for all game against Kinatu, and then he just didn't have to worry. It was inevitability.
Basically, like, there was an inevitability, like, you stalled it a little bit with the item builds you go for to try and be able to, like, play in that side lane and
the
play
Hull Breaker,
wave clear, but yes, at the moment you start being able to threaten tier 2s and deal with 1v2s, it became like a massive issue to deal with.
Deal with him early. Don't leave him to the late game. That's when he wants it.
Okay, so never let him scale. Obviously, the message from the desk here. And with that being said, Jester's picking up their first win. We are going to throw to a quick break before we get into the second game of the day, which will be V3 taking on Axis.